Hi, friends from Minnesota and around the country. Thanks for joining us for another Child Protection League Action webinar. Tonight, we are going to cover a topic called social emotional learning. It's not a new buzzword. It's been around the education world for quite some time, but we feel it's an important topic for you to understand and know what social emotional learning is. So tonight, our presenter is Barb Anderson. Barb is one of the board members of the Child Protection League. She's a former teacher. She has decades of experience in research, analysis, and writing reports and doing commentary on curriculum and public school policy. We're so happy to have Barb as part of our organization. And we are thrilled to have her here tonight to talk to us about social emotional learning. So hang with us. It's an important topic, and we want you to fully understand what it is. This part of the presentation will be about a half hour long, and then we'll do some Q&A. If you're watching us live on YouTube, you can ask questions and make comments in the chat, and we will we'll bring them up and let's talk about it. Well, Barb, are you there and are you ready to get started?
Yes, you bet. Thank you, Michelle. The topic of our webinar today, as Michelle said, is social and emotional learning and how it will harm your child because your children are at risk. The purpose of this webinar is to awaken, inform, and mobilize parents to push back against this dangerous and latest educational craze that is moving at breakneck pace into our school districts all across Minnesota and around the nation. I will cover the 5 following areas. Oops, we got it. Okay, what is social emotional learning? The organizations that are creating and are funding CEL programs, CEL curricula and who promotes them, surveys, data, and assessments, and alternatives to CEL and what you can do. Well, first of all, what is social and emotional learning? CEL is a process through which children's emotions, attitudes, and behaviors are retrained through emotional manipulation using subjective criteria. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, known as CASEL, is the organization that developed CEL. It is a nationwide initiative for pre-K through 12 that transforms public schools from academic institutions into therapeutic institutions for diagnosing and treating perceived social emotional problems. You see, CEL is a form of therapy where educators are taught to practice psychology on innocent school children with unknowing parents. In the medical world, that would require legal consent from the patient or from the responsible adult. CEL, however, bypasses all of the typical protection laws. Parents are unaware that their children are being covertly screened for mental health issues by non-medical educators in non-medical contexts by using non-professional mental health assessments. Currently, the states that are participating in CEL are California, Illinois, Kansas, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Washington. But this keeps changing. An additional 11 states have applied, and Tennessee and Georgia, however, had originally applied, but they withdrew from CEL. In 2017, the Minnesota Safe and Supportive School Conference was held at the University of Minnesota St. Paul campus on January 25th of that year. It was sponsored by the Minnesota Department of Education and the School Safety Technical Assistance Center. CEL was the focus of this conference. The keynote speaker, Karen Van Osdal, shared that CASEL's Collaborating District Initiative, oops, we're having trouble with moving this ahead here. Okay, here it is. That CASEL's Collaborating District Initiative is at the forefront of national efforts to make CEL an integrated integral part of pre-K through 12 grade education. Cell instructors train the teachers to map students' cultural values. And that simply means what they are doing is they are identifying a student's personal cultural values and their preferences. This information then is collected in a data dashboard and measured to see whether an individual demonstrates change in regard to their attitudes, their feelings, and their behaviors. The results are entered into a national cell databank. This is social engineering at taxpayer expense. CASEL breaks down cell into 5 core competencies. They are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. According to the CEL report, New Vision for Education, the goal is to introduce CEL early and to embed it into the core curriculum throughout a child's schooling. This document also admits, and I quote, stakeholders still lack consensus on the definition of CEL, end quote. In other words, here we have a 35-page paper promoting CEL when no one knows exactly what it is, and yet everyone is being told that they must do it. Few legislators understand what CEL is all about, even though it has been incorporated into Minnesota law through the 2014 Minnesota Safe and Supportive Schools Act, aka the bullying bill. It is crucial for our elected lawmakers to become aware of the dangers of CEL because social emotional learning is being prioritized and deeply embedded into education policy. Van Osdal stated that in order to experience positive change, a school district must be saturated with CEL. She said their goal is to develop and implement CEL standards and assessments in all grades, all subjects, by all teachers. According to another CEL report entitled Equity in Social and Emotional Learning, it is their hope that through transformative CEL education, they will be viewing children and youth as the next generation to reflect our interest in making explicit issues such as power, privilege, prejudice, discrimination, social justice, empowerment, and self-determination in the field of CEL, or for the development of justice-oriented global citizens. This is alarming. All of these topics will be woven throughout CEL curricula at all grade levels. That doesn't leave much room to teach reading, writing, and math, or talk about American history, patriotism, the US Constitution, or what it means to be an American citizen. The CEL New Vision for Education report states that global organizations such as the OECD, UNESCO, and the World Bank are well positioned to help to advance the international agenda. CEL indoctrinates students to support left-wing social justice causes with values that often differ from the values and viewpoints learned in the home. Children whose views regarding human sexuality and family that are based on religious teachings or traditional beliefs will experience emotional conflict in the classroom because their values will be targeted for change by CEL trainers and teachers. CEL is taking our educational system into dangerous waters by undermining the moral and character values of a large population of families. Non-judgmental awareness teaching violates a child's conscience and interferes with a child's ability to follow his sense of right and wrong. When a child seeks to do what is right, he grows in moral character and develops the self-control that is necessary for learning. Every child in America has the right to freedom of conscience, thought, and religion, and CEL will undermine those rights. Social emotional learning is being praised as the new science in education. Really? CEL research, however, is disconnected from science, it's disconnected from academics, and it definitely is disconnected from common sense. The focus is taken off of goals for academically achieving students, and it emphasizes their feelings and attitudes instead. Academic content takes a back seat to teaching affective and non-cognitive attitudes, values, and beliefs based on government-approved attitudes. This is a huge, significant paradigm shift for the U.S. educational system. This is a shift that will not prepare our students for college or future careers. The CEL New Vision of Education report actually admits to the following problems with CEL. Number one, there's going to be more screen time for children, replacing human interaction. Two, it's hard to measure CEL consistently. Three, difficulty holding educators accountable due to this lack of measurement. Four, there is already stretched funding. Five, insufficient time to teach academic skills. Isn't that why we send our kids to school? And last, six, confusing array of CEL definitions and terminology. These are 6 good reasons not to implement CEL into our public schools. The organizations that are creating and are funding CEL programs, there is quite a list of those. And the CEL initiative, first of all, as noted earlier, is led by CASEL. CASEL lobbies state legislatures and Congress to have states implement CEL into their education policy. The mammoth K-12 education establishment is partnering with corporate education cronies to mold the minds of your children through curricula and psychological assessments. Businesses are encouraged to partner with CEL so they can develop policies that link CEL to their business needs. They can make a profit on schools by ensuring that CEL will fit into their future workforce needs by having the children trained in these areas. Some of the CASEL and CEL funding partners, foundations, and charitable trusts include the federal government through the Institution of Education Sciences. This is a research arm of the U.S. Department of Education. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the 1440 Foundation. This organization promotes Buddhist yoga and mindfulness exercises. According to CASEL, their goal is to develop and pilot measures for collecting data on mindfulness practices, and your children will be the guinea pigs. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, they promote socialized medicine and climate change hysteria. The Novo Foundation, they are a leftist organization that promotes transgender rights. They are, quote, dedicated to catalyzing a transformation in global society, moving from a culture of domination to one of equality and partnership. Their goal is to help create a balanced world. That means taking down America. And lastly, state dollars. That means taxpayers. Yes, cost is a great concern. CEL implementation requires the hiring of a director, CEL specialists, and ongoing trainers for all teachers in each school district. Let's look at some of the CEL curricula examples and who promotes them. The Human Rights Campaign is a national LGBT advocacy organization for LGBT rights and all sexual and gender identities, and they are a major player in promoting CEL. Welcoming Schools, a project of HRC, was not developed at the request of parents and teachers, but at the urging of parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays, PFLAG, of Greater Boston, who partnered with the Human Rights Campaign. HRC also partnered with the National Education Association to promote the Welcoming Schools curriculum. They did this as a way to create safe and supportive school climates all across the country. This curriculum is the centerpiece of CEL and the Safe and Supportive Schools Act that was signed into law in Minnesota in 2014. Welcoming Schools includes 6 hours of LGBT training for teachers. In many school districts, welcoming schools has actually replaced academic training in the professional development courses for teachers. Teachers are taught the beauty of homosexual love, how to view their students as gender neutral, how to teach these radical ideas to children, and how to introduce LGBT inclusive children's books. These lessons clash with constitutionally protected First Amendment free speech and religious liberties. Then there's a maze for elementary children. This is a cell-based curriculum that embeds anti-bias theory and social emotional learning. Anti-bias education requires students and their teachers to check their preconceived notions, their biases at the schoolhouse door, and to affirm all expressions of identity. Amaze instructors use kids' books for young children that cover different family structures, including gay and lesbian family members, religion, and gender expression and identity. Life-size dolls are used in the classroom with the children to manipulate their emotions. And then there's mindfulness education. We just lost that here. Get it back in a minute. Okay, here we go. Mindfulness meditation. Here's an exercise used in a classroom. These exercises are derived from a Buddhist religious practice, and they are used in the classroom under the guise of making students more tolerant and less judgmental. They do this by emptying a child's mind of all the thoughts. Children sit on the floor with their legs crossed and their eyes closed. The negative side effects can include bringing the mind into an altered state of consciousness. Students can also encounter a sensation of being disconnected from one's body or from reality. These are real potential dangers from Buddhist mindfulness meditation. Cell curricula lessons also include teaching students fluidity of sexual identity, anti-Christian indoctrination, praise of Islam, and view America as a racist nation. Surveys, data, assessments. Students will be tested on a regular basis to look for improvement in retraining their emotions and values. Children that don't have the right social emotional skills will be remediated by CEL through use of the computer with adaptive curriculum assessments. These will be embedded in the curriculum. Their social and emotional skills are then tracked and adjusted as needed until a child's beliefs line up with the preconceived viewpoints the promoters seek to advance. UNESCO has agreed to partner with Microsoft to jointly develop programs and solutions that use technology. Some trainers may choose to use wearable devices for students, such as smartwatches, wristbands, headsets, or apps to regulate and track a student's response. They do this by noting a fluctuation in stress and emotion. Teachers complain that lengthy assessments to retrain students shorten the academic day and take valuable time away from the academic lesson planning. No surprise here. Educators know that even though they are required to fill out confidential surveys of their cell activities, the principals can read the responses. This often leads some teachers to making false or exaggerated claims to give the appearance of success. A psychologist admits that the measurements are fakeable, imprecise, and they have 1,000 biases. All of these mental assessments are a bureaucratic nightmare that will bog down the entire public school system with increased paperwork and increased administrative costs. The paperwork will not be protected by the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, known as the HIPAA laws, since the assessments are being administrated by teachers. The school district can share the assessments of your child's mental health with anyone. Parents are not asked for permission before the children are screened, nor do they have any say over where the child's records will end up. Another danger of cell is that untrained people will assign labels to your children that will be preserved forever in a government data system. All of that data will become a permanent part of your child's academic record. This collection of data is a violation of privacy and interferes with the fundamental private rights of conscience to which every American is entitled. Doctors are warning about the extremely sensitive nature of evaluating a child's social emotional makeup and having inadequately trained teachers and staff implementing techniques designed to alter children's psyches. Schools are institutions of learning, not mental health facilities. Cell assessments are nothing more than psychological evaluations and should not be conducted under the guise of improving educational outcomes for pre-K through 12 students. Well, what are some alternatives to cell and what can you do? One slide behind, here's the next one. What you can do. Number one, refuse to let your children take state standardized tests. 2, refuse any social emotional screening tool like Devereux Student Strengths Assessment, DESSA. Tell your school board to reject cell. Notify your state representatives and senators to stop cell. Contact the Minnesota Department of Education and Commissioner and tell them that you do not want your children psychologically tested, profiled, and tracked. And tell them to focus on academic achievement testing only. And then get out now. Protect your child. Because if your child's public school is becoming saturated with cell, that is your only choice to get out. Parents lost the battle of control over the public school curriculum a long time ago. Protect your child and seek other options for education. Cell is not a federal mandate, even though the federal Every Student Succeeds Act contains provisions to support social emotional learning. CASEL claims that their advocacy efforts have helped embed cell into public policies. School districts can reject cell, and they can implement approved character education in elementary schools using the Golden Rule. This will save time for academics. Recess time, stretching exercises, and even a moment of silence to help children focus are much better alternatives for students than the mindfulness exercises in cell. Parents, you must proactively stave off the introduction of social and emotional learning initiatives in your school district because they will put your child's future at risk. Cell is an irresponsible social experiment that weakens academics, harms kids emotionally, and tracks them for life. This video is intended to be a useful tool for all interested parties to use to share with state and federal lawmakers, congressional and state legislative staff, education policymakers, school board members, teachers, and parents and taxpayers who will also share this information with others. The question is, who should be instilling values, attitudes, and beliefs in children and monitoring their emotions? The answer is parents. With the assistance of churches, perhaps, but certainly not the government through the public schools. In the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, the piper played a magical melody that lured children away from their parents, leading them through a door in a mountain that closed forever behind them. Parents must not allow their children to be led away by the luring call of cell trainers. Cell closes the door to individual thinking, common sense, family values, and turns students into the next generation of leftist activists. Aristotle said, "All who have meditated on the art of governing mankind are convinced that the fate of empires depends on the education of youth. The fate of America depends on whether we win this education battle for the minds of our youth. Thank you.